Movies are like dreams. Flickering images, sounds, and colors that you remember when they're gone, but not perfectly. Sometimes it's just a sensation that's hard to define but lingers in your mind. Shockwaves is one of those odd films that a lot of 80s kids remember seeing on late night cable, often only in sections while drifting to sleep with the TV on. Maybe never actually watching it beginning to end in one sitting, but just vaguely recalling it as that weird movie with the Nazi zombies walking underwater. It's not profound, it's not extremely artful, but the film has a lilting, foggy sensation that seeps into the viewer's mind and memory. Its premise is as vague as its style. Things are suggested but not truly explained. It seems to have something to do with the Bermuda Triangle, something to do with Nazi occultism, peppered with other paranormal ideas that were popular at the time.
Maybe we should ask them.
You are now in the deep end of horror. Shockwaves. Once they were almost human. Shockwaves. It is something else.
So that's kind of interesting to see and brings back a lot of fond memories. But the movie itself, I have to say, I don't have any strong feelings about, other than, in terms of a lot of the directorial issues, my God, it's really embarrassing at times.
Writer-director Ken Wiederhorn, who doesn't particularly like the film, was inspired by reading the section on the Third Reich in the famous pseudoscience book The Morning of the Magicians, which was also the source of the ancient astronaut theory. The film was shot mostly in Florida in June of 1975, while the shipwrecks were photographed at Bimini in the Bahamas.
Got the engine.
The exceptionally grainy look of the film is the result of shooting on 16mm that was then blown up to 35.
You hear that? Be quiet.
A group of vacationers are taking a cruise on the filthiest boat in the world, run by a surly captain and a sleazy cook.
Listen, my friend, what we must have on this boat is accurate navigation.
Sorry.
Don't apologize, navigate.
At least Sandy from Flipper grew up to become an able seaman. They pass through a kind of atmospheric disturbance that results in a ghost ship and other things rising from the depths to attack them.
It was a minor underwater disturbance, with a hot sky acting on a cold current coming from a mile down below.
They take refuge on an island inhabited by a lone castaway, a former SS commander who ran Hitler's demonic program to create unkillable super soldiers.
We created the perfect soldier from cheap hoodlums and thugs, in a good number of pathological murderers and sadists as well. We called them the Totenchor, the Death Corps, creatures more horrible than any you can imagine.
He drowned the troops at the end of the war by sinking their ship, but decades later, whatever supernatural things that are going on in these waters appears to have awakened them. Shockwaves is not part of a series, but it has much in common with other low-budget horror films of the time. The 70s were a unique era, when film equipment was more readily available to outsiders. Yet, there was no substantial means of networking outside of Hollywood. Independent filmmakers, working in complete isolation from the movie business and from each other, created their films from scratch, going on instinct and passion. The most famous of these regional horror films packed more of a visceral punch, but many others, like Shockwaves, went for a more mysterious and eerie vibe, and all seemed to be cut from the same surreal, chimeric cloth. The film is also nourished by a legacy of horror that preceded it. Two genre legends appear, John Carradine in the first act of the film and Peter Cushing in the second. And the influence of EC Comics, whether intentional or not, seems self-evident. As much as the cinematography and pacing, the ambient electronic score by Richard Einhorn is a major ingredient in the film's ethereal quality. Einhorn went on to score Ken Wiederhorn's next film too, the Hitchcockian 1981 thriller Eyes of a Stranger. The story's narrator, Rose, is driven insane by the trauma she's experienced. But was her story all true, pure fantasy, or was it a jumble of reality and nightmare?
It's only now I remember it.
Ultimately, Shockwaves evolved from diverse elements, many of them unplanned. The filmmakers may have wished for better conditions all around, but the dinginess of everything on screen, including the gritty texture, becomes part of the atmosphere that makes the film so effective. These factors probably couldn't have been replicated artificially if someone had tried.
Well, unlike Ken, I think there's a tremendous fan following for this picture, and I think it's probably because it doesn't follow any particular pattern or formula that was established prior to it or even since the film. And I was very fascinated by it, and I was extremely pleased with the way it turned out. I don't think there was anything to be embarrassed about the picture at all from anybody's standpoint.
Like many of the other independent horror films of the 70s, Shockwave compensates for lesser production values by embracing its non-commercial elements, its elliptical storyline and dream logic, as well as its swampy locale full of dappled light and mangroves, its implied supernatural backstory, and especially its striking spectral imagery.